Tickets are on sale now for Spotlight On's next live event, this time at the Royal Room in Seattle, Washington on June 22nd. Spotlight On, Improvisation in Music and Life will be a unique program of performance and conversation between me and the James Falzone Division Ensemble. Together, we'll explore the nature of improvisation in music and how its principles can be useful in all aspects of life, for musicians and non-musicians alike. Different types of composing in the moment will be demonstrated, interspersed with interludes of discussion covering what each musician brings to and gets from the experience. In the Q&A session, audience members will become participants and access a rare opportunity to gain deeper insight into the art and science of improvisation. For tickets and other information, visit theroyalroomseattle.com. For those of you who cannot join us in person, we'd still welcome and appreciate your support in the form of a ticket purchase. If you can, please do. It would mean the world to us and to this important independent venue. Thanks. Hello and welcome to Spotlight On, a production of 23 Media Ventures. I'm your host, Lawrence Purrier. Today the spotlight shines on singer, songwriter, and multi-instrumentalist Paul Chastain. Paul is one half of the duo The Small Square, with drummer, percussionist, and vocalist John Louis Richardson. He's also a songwriter for and co-founder of the group Velvet Crush, and he's worked with Matthew Sweet, Roger McGuinn, Susanna Hoffs, and the late Tommy Keene, amongst many others. Paul and John released the second record from The Small Square, Ours and Others, on Farm to Table Records in October 2023. While separated by a continent and ocean, Paul lives in Japan, John in Wisconsin. They co-produced the record and created a modern sound using modern techniques, but rooted in classic songwriting and musicianship, in the tradition of the Beatles, the Beach Boys, and Big Star. Enjoy our talk. So where on the planet are you?
I am in Hyogo, Japan. 8:30 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
Just got everybody out the door here, so I'm ready. I'm ready to rock.
8:30 is early for rock and roll.
It's not so early in my world. It may be early for rock and roll, but I'm up usually by 6.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks for making time. It's great to talk with you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
If I may, I have a couple of geography questions for you. And the first one is, what brought you originally to Providence back in the day? It's not an obvious place to move to, especially from a big city.
My partner, Rick Mink, and I, the partner in this was pre-Velvet Crush time, we both decided we wanted to get out of the Midwest and go to one of the coasts. And I think originally he's from the East Coast, his family. And so he had some relatives that lived in, where was it? In Massachusetts. And we were going to go live at a house that was like a family house that no one was currently in, and they were just caretakers of. And so we had planned to do that. At the sort of 11th hour, somebody sort of objected to that real strongly. But everything was already in motion, so we just decided to go. Actually, I think he was already out there because Rick had just done some dates, some early stuff with Matthew Sweet, opening for Till Tuesday. And I think he was maybe staying with our future manager, Michael Hausman, the drummer from Till Tuesday. And I think he was already out there. So I said, well, I'm coming out and we'll figure something out. And then, so when I got out there, we realized that we knew this guy, Jeffrey, who became our guitar player eventually, but he was from Wisconsin. And he had a band called the White Sisters. And he had moved to Providence some years earlier than that. So we went down. He said, you can come and stay with me for a while and see if you want to hang out, set up shop in Providence. And it's pretty cheap. It's much cheaper than Boston, and it's not far, and blah, blah, blah. So we did that, stayed with Jeffrey, graciously offered that. And eventually we just rented a house there and we stayed there. And then we asked Jeffrey to be our guitar player for the band. And then the 3-piece Velvet Crush band was born at that point.
What's the Providence that you walked into? I mean, it's an interesting city with a little bit of an interesting history. And then, in the 80s and the 90s, it had a bit of a scene going on. I'm curious what you walked into.
I feel like it was kind of post-scene. There wasn't a lot going. There was a lot of bands and stuff, but and a lot of art because the RISD school is there, the School of Design. There's a lot of stuff going on, but nothing seemed like it was all that focused. There were like little pockets of things here and there. And we just got a rehearsal space and just started hunkered down and decided to start doing stuff. So we like put out a single. I think Rick started to talk about putting out singles from other bands and stuff as we got to know everyone, all the different musicians from the different little pockets. We became friends with all these guys. And then a scene started to form, I think, while we were there. We became pretty close friends with a lot of the bands that were around at the time, just in our area. So we would do shows with everybody, and we just kind of slaughtered ourselves in. But I feel like it was the beginning of the next thing that was going to happen there. And then the stuff that had previously happened was kind of just winding out a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. How do you feel about, or do you think about genre at all? The cliche is obviously it's power pop, and it seems to cast such a large net from like singer-songwriters who happen to plug in their guitars.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, do you think about that as a lineage, or is it just, this is the sound I make when I turn my instruments on?
Yeah, I think it's more the latter. I never really loved, I don't mind it so much now, but I remember being in Velvet Crush and starting to get the sort of power pop tag on stuff. I never really liked that because I guess I never really thought of us as being that. Although I admit, a lot of our influences are those kind of bands, or what things you would consider to be that kind of things. But that's not the limit of our influences, as I think we displayed on some of the recordings. But I just never liked that sort of pigeonholing of that, because I just felt like it's so limiting. And I didn't feel like if all of our songs were one of our songs, if that was the case, then yes, we're a power pop band. We have like country rock songs, and we have freak out songs and all different kinds of songs. And I just never felt as a writer and the sort of voice of the band, I felt inspired by those kind of bands, but I never felt like we are like Badfinger or we are like the Raspberries or something. I love those bands, and I wanted to have elements of those bands, but we were just as much as focused on being like the Kinks or being like the Flying Burrito Brothers at times, or being like whatever. And now I understand a little more that it's like a convenience, so people can get the idea of what your basic thing is, and then that's not the only thing that power pop fans like. You know what I mean? I just never felt like I fit into that, and I sort of resented it a little, even at the time, unnecessarily. But I always wanted to just do my thing and not call it something. It wasn't really my job to call it a thing. I want to make the art, and you can say what it is, whatever.
Yeah.
And people can agree or disagree about that. But I didn't want to be limited by that, and I don't think we were. It was just like a little mental thing with me.
It's interesting how something that sort of starts as like a way to have a discussion, or to give something some context, or to figure out where to file it in the record store, takes on a life of its own. But it's also fascinating what a big tent it ultimately did end up being, especially on the musicians that emerged in what I would call the sort of post-indie era of after the mid-late 80s into the 90s. Yeah. And I guess after digesting the music that came before, it's a fascinatingly rich heritage.
Yeah, that's why I don't really know which bands, when somebody says power pop, you don't really know which kind of thing they're talking about, because there's so many different spokes in that wheel. Is Cheap Trick a power pop band? Well, maybe, but I don't really think of them as a power pop band. But I love them. As you said, it's quite thick, but I think that's a good thing, because then I think that my original problem with it sort of goes away at that point, because it does include a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
so it's okay,
At this point in my life, when I hear that, or when I read something referred to as that, I think, oh, okay, this is going to be like literate and good sounding music. Whether or not it's exactly for me in the specific, I know that in general, oh, okay, this is going to have some craft to it.
Yeah, I think it's okay, because it's become so general. And maybe it was then too, and I just didn't realize it. But I always felt aggravated by it more than anything. But I understand. And now it definitely is a broad thing. And it's actually okay, because it helps point people to find you in the sea of so many things trying to be found.
Well, not to linger there, but in the context of the Small Square, obviously it's a very, not classic sound in terms of dated, but a recognizable sound. What's really cool about it is it's very modern in terms of how you guys have to work together, just given the reality of geography and the other people that you bring in. It seems like you've reached this point where you get a best of both worlds sort of scenario, where you can go out to the farm and record together, but you also have the benefit of this sort of global village of musicians in your network that you can tap into. And generationally, I think we're probably roughly in the same age. As you've seen not necessarily the business side of music change, but really like the tool and technology side of music change. How has that affected you as an artist?
It's a huge thing because I remember I'm still from time to time amazed that I can send a file to someone, or they can send me a file and I can put it in my session like I've done a bunch of times now. But I remember when that wasn't even a thought, like you couldn't do that. You had to take someone into the studio with you and go and the only way to really make a decent recording was to go into a recording studio and do it that way. You know, I would have just loved to have done this when I was starting out. I can't imagine what that would be like, but in Providence, I was doing like recordings on, I moved to computer eventually, but before that I was doing reel-to-reel. We did some Velvet Crush demos on reel-to-reel. And then I moved to ADAT tapes, which are digital. They look like a VHS cassette, but it's a digital format, eight tracks. And you have to have if you want to do more than 8 tracks, you have to have more than one machine. So I had a couple of machines so I can do 16 tracks. That sort of was the beginning for me of you could actually send that tape to someone in the mail and have them contribute to it. We still weren't quite to be able to send files electronically like now. So now it's super, super easy. But I just remember being so thrilled at the concept, the thought of being able to do that. Like, wow, I could get someone in a different place, a different country even, to be on this recording. It would be so cool. Or to write songs with or do something like that. And now it's just like so commonplace an occurrence. And it is how I operate on every project. I have to, pretty much. So it's changed a lot. I think the basic way that I like make a song hasn't changed so much. I do what I do. So when I go to John's farm, to the studio there, it's a proper recording studio, and we go, and I usually go there once or twice a year, and we try to make stuff. And so what I do is I bring whatever I have, whatever I've been working on. Some things are like a full demo of a thing that you can tell what the song is. And sometimes it's like, I have this idea. Sometimes it's like a chorus part or whatever, anything in between, all those different things. So depending on what I bring into the studio, the process affects what we do more or less. If I bring anything and John likes it, then we'll do it how I did my demo. But this also happens. I bring in a thing that's a fully blown demo, and John said, well, I like the song, but let's try to do it like in a different way than that. Let's not do it this way. So then we deconstruct that and we try a different thing. Or I don't even have the song finished and we work on it there. And then maybe there's somebody there that day that's working with us in the studio, like our friend Walt Vincent, who plays on some of the songs. He's a producer and a bass player and keyboard player, multi-instrumentalist. And so when somebody like that is there with us, he's part of the process, and we work out a song together or fix one that we don't know what's wrong with or something like that. Well, we use the person's talent and knowledge to help do it. So that kind of thing can only happen if we've done it in that way. You know what I mean? Like if I finish the song, there's less for them to contribute. And so depending on how I bring it in, it's really kind of the interesting part, or one of the interesting parts of doing it that way. Cause I like not knowing the outcome on some things. Some things I'm like, I really like this. I think this is right to the point. I like it. But sometimes you have something like, I just have this seed of an idea and I think that's cool, but so what? Who cares? Make me care. Like, so John and whoever else we have working that day with us will make that happen. And I can't foresee what that's going to be. And that's cool. I like that, I think that's fun. It's fun and really super creative. Like you're just on the spot, pulling off of everyone else's feelings about it. And I think that's one of the cool things.
Yeah, it sounds like what you're talking about also is a very human mixture of openness as well as a trust in these people that you're collaborating with. You're open to the idea that maybe their input is better than what you initially thought. And I can imagine there are certainly musical situations where there's more of an auteur approach where it's like, no, this is the demo. I just need you to play my idea just better than I can on the demo.
I think that happens too, but maybe less so because I like to play. I'm not like the greatest musician probably in the world, but I like to play on the songs. But I also try to recognize when I need a thing that is beyond, either I don't know what to do or it just is something that has to be beyond what I'm capable of doing. But the other thing I should add is when we do have people in the studio, what we generally do is we have a little playlist or even a CD. And so we play on this boombox, we play the songs, and then we have whoever the person or people are. Like on the last record, we had a couple songs we did with a large ensemble. We play these 5, 6, 8 songs, whatever. or song fragments even, and say, what would you like to work on? Did any of those hit you? So we get their sort of emotional, like what they respond to, because our styles aren't always perfect for each person that we have in there. Maybe they could do something out of it, I'm sure, but like, what do they really like? What hits them? Is there anything like, this is cool, I like this. So we'll do that. That's how we do it. We try to start with the ball in that court where that's our advantage, is that everyone has some kind of emotional reaction to the song, and then we build it or do whatever we need to do on that song. I try to approach it like that. I don't like to tell the people what to play. I want them to do their thing, because what they do isn't going to be what I do. So I want to see what that is. And it doesn't always work out. I've actually taken contributors off the song in a mix because I've gotten the mix to a different point through different other things, or maybe someone else added something, and then I understood that was the direction that seemed the most obvious and the most pleasing. And so maybe somebody's part. And I hate to do that because they just really contribute for fun and for free usually. But sometimes I have done that where I think this guitar thing it's just not helping us reach the goal that I have now identified. And it's only because I hadn't identified the goal when they contributed. But their contribution helped me get to that point.
Yeah.
So it was a building block, but maybe I'm not going to use it in the final analysis. But generally, I don't do that.
Well, and it's not wasted if it helps you get to the end result. It's not wasted.
Yeah, I think it's never wasted because of the energy, or maybe one song I'm thinking of in particular is this song called "Open Up" on the new record, and we did that song with a large ensemble, the same ensemble that did the song "Sound Object," and I ended up taking parts off of the song after we asked our friends in the band Shoes to contribute vocals to it and the lead guitar. And so after they put that stuff on the track, I knew what I should do with the track. And it was just like a power pop song, just straight up. And it shouldn't be anything else. So anything else that didn't sort of go in that lane, to me, in my mind and my heart, that I had to pull off. I think maybe I replaced the bass on it with my own bass. And maybe I took a guitar off that somebody had contributed because it just wasn't necessary. And at the time, I didn't know what the song was trying to be. I didn't know what we were going to make out of it. But that song was just conceived as just a piece. It was a live thing, like almost like a sound check in front of people that I wrote to do when Small Square did a tour for our first record in Japan. And that was like a warm-up thing because you don't get the sound checks so much that are meaningful. So I had it arranged so that the drums play, then the bass comes in, then the guitars, and then it's kind of over. Everything happens and then it ends. But so I brought that in and we were like, oh, this is cool. Let's do this. And I said, well, it's just like it needs a part. It's got like one part.
No bridge.
Yeah, I didn't have a bridge. Exactly. And the ensemble wrote the bridge. Like we wrote the bridge together. They figured out chords and we threw it around just for a few minutes. It took a really short amount of time. And then I applied a melody later to that. But when we tracked it, that bridge had just been made up. Without those people there, that bridge might not have happened like that. I might have written one, but it wouldn't have been necessarily that thing. That was very important to have in the song. Even though I might not have used all the musicians' musical contributions, their writing contributions and their ideas and their energy for that track definitely was essential to doing it. I didn't want to take people off, but once I had it defined, do you know the band Shoes? They're like a power pop band from the 70s. So once I got them on doing their vocal thing, which really just sounds like nobody else, they have their own thing. Once I heard their voice, I was like, I got it. I know what we need to do on this now. I know what I need to do. That was the genesis of that whole thing.
The way I hear all that is, despite not coming into a session or a project with sort of every song having been totally laid out and being very sort of dogmatic about what each song has to be, once a song starts to take shape, every decision starts to be like in the ruthless service of the song. Like it has to serve the song.
Yes. Yeah, it does. And I try to keep extra stuff out of it. And then sometimes I come out of the sessions at John's and we don't have time to like fully do overdubs on everything that we work on. So we try and get drums. That's the most important thing. And then maybe I'll do a bass or I'll do a guitar or something, or vocals sometimes. But usually they're not finished when I leave there. So I bring them home. So then I have more time, and usually I have to finish lyrics, or sometimes even have to finish like the melodic parts of it, like on that song. They still will further change because I sort of like then digest what we've got. Because at the time, I don't always know. Like we do the song and then we move to the next thing. I'm like, it seems cool. I don't know. Let's move on. And then I get later, I'm like, oh, I see. Yeah, this is cool. And I need to do this, or I need to figure out, it's like, or else I'm like, maybe I need to have John do the drums again on it because I want to do this differently. And that happens too. It's a little hit and miss, but I try and go with this sort of just organic flow of it. And it's quite a bit later, weeks later, or months even, when I'm trying to finish a thing. And then it might sound really different to me at that point, but I take it at that point and go, okay, what do I want to do? What am I feeling in this song? What am I hearing? And I finish them out in that way. Most of them get done that way. Sometimes we finish tracking at John's, but usually there's just not time unless I don't have many song ideas, and we just like work on them and then finish it. But generally we're jamming the whole time we're there and trying to do the stuff we really need to do together. I can do vocal tracks and stuff here easy enough. So yeah.
Your process is fascinating. It's really fascinating.
Really?
Yeah. In the course of an album, how many in-person batches of sessions do you get with John? Is it like you just go track and then go home and finish, or do you go back and forth a couple times? Or
1 to 3, probably. It depends on how long the time span is. In the case of this last record, probably there were 3 sessions, because I remember one session, those were actually recorded. We had this other friend of ours had his 2-inch analog machine at John's studio at that time. So we recorded some of those songs on 2-inch, the basics of them, because they had it all hooked up and going. And we had that going, him and another guy helping him, I think, and then all these other musicians. We have 4 or 5 other musicians, and John and myself, and we were tracking live without vocals to 2-inch tape. So it was kind of like a circus. So the song Found Object, I used everybody's stuff on that song, I think, and I added something.
I was shaken in the cold and restless night, left too close to alone. From my younger affectations, every word was dissipated like a ghost into the smoke. Late, I had to wait and take the longer road. Destinations without plans are all I've known. So that's like the big band. There were like 2 keyboard players, and John on drums, and I play guitar, and another guitar player, and a bass player, and then we overdubbed steel or something like that on it. The bass player played steel also. So we did that. And so that was a whole bunch of people, plus our friend Brad recording on the 2-inch, doing that. And he was also doing a video of some of the stuff that we were recording. Not like any of our other sessions were, because there was like 10 extra people around. But the first song on the record, 23rd, the piano song, that was an idea that was John's idea. He had this little piano figure. He said, I got this thing. And I said, oh, that's cool. I could make something out of that. So let's do it. Let's work on it. So it was just he and I in the studio. His song needed a bridge part. I made up a bridge part. And so when we recorded the song, he ran in and started the Pro Tools session, came back out. We have the click track going. He plays his part. We made up a song for him, right? And then he plays his part. And then the song has these stops in it that are just sort of built into it. When we got to the end of his verse and chorus kind of section that he plays, he's like holding the last key down, the bass note on the piano. And I slide in on the piano bench and I play the bridge part.
right? And then the same thing. So then at the end of the bridge part, it stops again, right? And holds, and I'm holding my key down, and he slides back in, and he finishes the song out and plays the rest of the part that he knows. And we didn't have to do it that way, but it was just the two of us working, and it was kind of fun and funny to do. You could overdub stuff, but really playing it like a grand piano, if it's playing by itself, it's harder to really kind of edit the stuff together convincingly. So it was better to do it in one shot. I don't know how we arrived at the decision.
Good night, Marianne. So sad too soon. So long, Peter Pan. I never doubted you. Fade out, fade out. Fade down. This one's for you and me. What will be, will be. This one's for
But that's what we did. And the piano track you hear on the record is that, which it's a good story, and it was kind of fun to do. But that was an example of nobody else being around, just us, not even an engineer, which we oftentimes do have help from an engineer that works at John's studio. So that sort of typifies the record, how it went from anything, one or two people, to 10 people doing something, and everything in between.
I'm gonna take the slightly romantic point of view and say that the way you did that actually mattered quite a bit, because it's such an intimate reflection of the nature of collaboration, but also just from the sonic point of view, like getting the ringing tones of the piano, all the decay, and like, I don't know. I'm firmly on the side that it matters.
Oh, cool. I'm not sure that we thought about it in those terms. I like that. But I'm not sure we thought about it in those terms. I don't really remember why we decided to do it that way. We were working it out. I remember figuring out a bridge thing, and he's like, "Oh, I can't play that." And I said, "Well, I can play that." And then we thought, "Okay, well, let's just try it this way." And we just did it.
Beautiful.
And it
Yeah.
didn't take us very long, I don't think. So it must have been the right choice. If it had been like a nightmare, we would have just started. We got to do it a different way.
Yeah. That's a good indicator.
But the thing is, it's two different players. So really, if you're trying to match that stuff, it's a little bit trickier to punch things in. You can punch things all over the place with Pro Tools, but the velocity is hitting the keys with and all this stuff, it'll change just because, even if it's from take to take, like if he starts playing or I start playing on a different take, I can't hit it the same way every time because I'm not really a piano player and I don't really have that much finesse. So there'll be variances in it. So that was actually, I think, sonically the best way to do it. But when I tell people about it, it seems like it was sort of dumb. But I'm glad I like your explanation of it, though.
We'll be back with more Spotlight On right after this break. Did you know that Spotlight On is completely self-funded by the team that produces it? We're looking for ways to keep the podcast self-sufficient without sacrificing the listener experience or the integrity of the show. The best way we could think of was to ask for the support of our listeners. Please consider making a donation to help cover our annual operating expenses. Go to spotlightonpodcast.com and click the word donate. If you can, please do. And if you cannot, please continue to enjoy the show. We're happy to have you as a listener. Thanks. And now, back to Spotlight On. I read somewhere else in a discussion with you, you refer to yourself as DIY. Obviously, back in the day, whenever we want to call back in the day, DIY almost referred to an aesthetic, right? Almost like this punk or post-punk, indie rock. I just think firmly of early mid-'80s DIY aesthetic. Zines and cassette tapes, and, it has it conjures this whole thing in my head.
Right.
But obviously, in this day and age, independent musicians, they have to wear almost all the hats, right? Like you're the songwriter, you're the arranger, you're the performer, you're the engineer, you're the editor, you're the mixer, you're the, it's endless. You're the promotion engine. It seems,
That's the thing. I like all that other stuff. That's the creative part of it. But the other part that's difficult is where you just stepped into there which is you are the promotion department and you are everything department. the sales department. And that's the stuff where I'm not great at doing. And I'm even learning as we put this record out, learning how to do that more and not great at it. I like to know how to do all this stuff, right? So that's my DIY-ness, I guess. But the stuff I like is all the other, I like to arrange the songs and I like to try to mix the songs and all the kind of stuff like that. Today, you kind of have to do a little of a lot of those things, or if not all, depending on who else you're working with and whatever. But
Did that come on fast? Or did you wake up one day and be like, oh my God, now I'm sales and promotion and marketing and everything else? Or did you sort of see it gradually? Did you see the industry shift happening?
I could see it, but I didn't know how to navigate it so much. And I really learned a lot. I'm still learning it, but I learned a lot just right before this record re-released the first Small Square record on John's label, which this is also on. During those two records, I had to learn the way you work with digital platforms and stuff like that, and which there's a lot to know, and I still don't know it all. But while I knew that was all going on, I did not really have an idea what it takes to do that and all the pieces you need to have in place. And that was kind of a rude awakening to come up against that. Once I just committed to doing the record, it's like, well, this is the only way I can do it. So I got to figure it out and do what I can do. I did hire a PR person, but I didn't hire any digital person because I just didn't have the budget to hire out everything. So I tried to do everything I could do in-house. Yeah, that's a lot of stuff. And I don't think it's necessarily good that I had to do it. I think there's something to it, and a person that is really good at it can help you more than I could help me.
Yeah, I hear you. It's a recurring theme in a lot of the conversations with artists I speak with about, especially folks who started closer to 20, 30 years ago, as opposed to 10, 20 years, sort of like the internet and the 90s are the demarcation line, right? If you were already a professional before the internet hit, there was just more of an infrastructure. Budgets were different, staffing was different, and it was a different world. And now to all of a sudden have to realize that, oh my gosh, all these things are my responsibility. It's interesting to hear the range of reactions from artists because it's everything you would imagine. Some people embrace it and other people begrudgingly do it and other people are mad.
The more I know about it, the less I mind it, the more I understand it. But the problem is it can take as much time as you will give it.
Yeah.
Right. So at that point, the same can be said about the creating of the stuff. That doesn't just happen for me. Like I don't just wake up and, have a fully blown song in my head and I'm going to record it that day or whatever. It doesn't happen like that. It takes a bunch of time for me. So the two things that need to go together are often fighting for time. And I'm not sure who the winner is on that, but I feel like there's not enough time to effectively do both things. And I guess as I get better at doing the other, if I keep doing that, the promotion, all that stuff, if I get better at doing that, it takes less time because you're more efficient and you know what's up. But as of right now, it's so draining to do that other stuff. You have to find your way back to, man, I'd really love to work on a song today. That'd be great. Like that's what I would do for fun if taking a break from the other.
As an artist, do you have a regimen? Do you have writing days or is it like catch as catch can?
Yeah, it's not really a schedule. Basically, when I start getting song ideas, I work on that kind of stuff in the morning. I seem to be more fresh about that stuff in the morning. So I'll try and get ideas down in the morning. And then my day gets kind of broken up. Usually that's my main sort of creative time. And then if I get a chance later in the day, I'll go and dig through some of the things I like, okay, what did I come up with this week? Or I remember I had a couple of ideas this week. Let's see what they were. And I'll go back and see. At the time, I take it as far as I can go with it. Maybe it's just this little lick, or maybe it's a whole, like I heard a song part in my head. So whatever it is, I'll record, do like a voice recorder thing of it and save it for later. So pretty much that's the way it works. And I suppose if I was very lucky, I would have almost a whole song. I could do it in that time. But really every morning, as I can, almost every morning, I'll work on stuff like that if I'm in that mode, which I kind of haven't been for a while. During the promotional phase of this record, I haven't really been doing too much of that. I've been working on some mixes of some older things that John and I had recorded during like pandemic times or right around there, post the record, but not super current. And I wanted to mix those and see what they are, like see if they make sense to do something with or not. That's been my kind of creative outlet. But I haven't really made a lot of songs recently, unfortunately.
Hearing the way you work and the ways you're able to work, that you have this sort of flexibility and adaptability, which it seems to play armchair psychologist seems like a very Midwestern attribute that you sort of,
Is
you
that
can
right?
deal with whatever situation comes at you. But did you find that it helped you at all during the pandemic? Was the pandemic particularly difficult for you, or were you able to be creative? Because I've talked to artists who have said it shut them down creatively, the isolation and the lack of interaction with other musicians. Whereas as someone who can work remotely and has that ability, did you keep going in any meaningful way?
Yeah, I still would do the same thing. What it affected was I was trying to find a home for this record, Ours and Others, at that time, because we had finished it. I made several failed attempts at finding people to put it out. And it changed, the situation changed what people would be willing to do or looking to do, because nobody knew what was going on. And so I failed to get that put out by someone else. That's where it changed for me. And also I wasn't able to do any live stuff, and I didn't go to the States for some time then, which I usually go once or twice a year. But as far as working on stuff, I was still able to keep on doing that. Maybe it changed a little bit because maybe there were more people around, like my family was here more than that. But still, I don't think it interrupted that as much. It was more the business side of things that it just like turned it upside down, or it just blocked it for a little while. And then we had to think of a different way to do it. So I'm like, I'm going to put this record out. I'm putting this record out. I don't know what it's going to take, but we're going to put it out somehow. And then things happened, and John decided to start a label arm of his studio. And then that became the viable way to do it, you know. But that all came out of maybe the pandemic. I don't know how he arrived at his decision to do that, but I think he saw a need or felt a need with his artists that he works with, and it benefited us. It just was a little delayed is all.
Given the fact that you both do so much and that you're multi-capable on the creative and technical side of your art, how would you characterize the sort of division of labor between you and John, or do you bother? Like, are there defined roles? It seems like you guys come together really closely as one sometimes.
There's not really defined roles. I'm really the principal songwriter. I feel like I need to come up with the songs, and then he's welcome to do songs that he does have. It doesn't so much do finished songs, but he'll have ideas, which we work on like mostly together when I go there. The door is always open to that. And then I have him collaborate on mine. Like I say, what do you think? What about this? And blah, blah, blah. What should we do? And the only really defined thing is that. And then I don't know. Since it's my songs, I feel really responsible for doing something with them. And I have maybe more time to do that than John does. So I do more of the stuff. John's main, I think, interaction is when we're creating the stuff. When I'm finishing stuff out, there'll be times when he'll come into play more, but he's really more at that moment. Like when we're doing it, that's when we collaborate the most. And then since I'm not in the States, there's stuff that he has to deal with being in the States that has to be dealt with in the States. So that sort of figures itself out, because I just can't do it. It's really hard for me to, for instance, make business phone calls to the States a lot of the time because of the time difference, and depending on which coast or whatever people are on. It's really like, well, I guess I can call somebody at 4 a.m, but I'm not really at my best at that point, you know, and stuff like that. So that's just not practical. If there's things like that, then John has to deal with that stuff on that side of the ocean. But I think it's just like basically what we do naturally. So it's not really like laid out schedule or something. It's just like I make songs and we go from there.
Very much like the work at the individual song level. It sounds like whatever's in service of the moment, like whoever's best capable or has the best idea of what's needed in the moment.
Yeah, I think so. I guess that's the way we do it. Maybe that's not quite as efficient.
You alluded to this earlier at the beginning of our chat, this notion of the expansiveness of existing outside of strict genre definitions. Given that you haven't really been in songwriting mode yet, maybe you're not ready to answer this, but on this record, it seems like there's some different textures and sounds, some keyboards or synthesis. I'm wondering, do you have a musical notion of like, okay, the next evolution is going to involve, you know, I'm going to go buy a theremin or
Right.
you know, whatever. Is there an avenue?
I don't really think I work like that. And there are a bunch of synthesizers and things on this record, but all that stuff is like spur of the moment. It wasn't really like a plan. It's just that like when I was working on a song, that song, North Main Blues, it has a big synthesizer thing in it. What happened was I was doing I played like a Wurlitzer sound on that, but it was a sample thing, and it was MIDI, recorded in MIDI. And so I thought, yeah, that's cool, but maybe I need some other weirder sounds. And I had recently gotten some plug-in synthesizers.
Most of them are vintage ones that I knew of, and maybe some of them I'd used before in the old days. But there was one crazy giant Yamaha, and I didn't really know what it was. And I just put it on the track, which was the MIDI track, was the Wurlitzer keyboard. But the setting that the synthesizer was on was like more like a random thing, sample hold and random. It's supposed to be reading the piano notes that I played, right? The MIDI information. But when it did that, it went, it sounded nothing like those notes and anything. And it just started going up. And I was like wearing headphones. And I was like, that is cool.
Didn't we waste time now for nothing, but it's easy to see. We were losers, but we could be found hanging out under the underground. We were sold out, begged and borrowed, kind of screwed up, chewed up and swallowed. Living now far from the shadows. Now we're inside out, everywhere we go. Everywhere we go. Everywhere we go.
And so then there you go. So then I thought this has to be in that song. So that's how it came about. It wasn't like a big plan to use it, just like it happened. I was like looking for something to go in it, but I didn't know what I was looking for. So I just happened across that. And then when I heard that sound, I was like, oh my God, that's got to go on this song because that's like amazing. And maybe it's not so amazing.
That's a crazy experience to sit down and play, whether it's a piano piece or anything really, with one preset, one sound in MIDI, or to lay down the track and then overlay a different plugin on it or a different sample instrument on it. And to hear how, wow, that has nothing to do with what it sounded like when it was a straight piano.
I was just trying it, but that was like simple so I could hear what it would do. And I didn't have any other track recorded, and I didn't want to like hook up a thing. So I had already had that recorded. So I'll just use this to see what these sounds sound like. And I thought, oh, it's going to be like strings, fake strings or whatever. And then just the like stock sound it happened. I punched a button, a preset, and it was on this crazy sample thing. And it was almost like a Moog modular version of that Yamaha had made. But everything, instead of cables, it was all connected together internally. But you still had to go from the amp to the filter and stuff, but just like an old synthesizer.
Oh, that's fun.
And so it was something like that. It was something like that. And the thing just, I wasn't ready for what it was going to sound like, playing the notes of the chord that I'd played. It's just some chords, And it was like, and it was going like all over the place. And it was like panning and stereo. I was like, oh, I got to use this. So basically that's like how I just sort of write songs, and then it's at the moment. Like I feel like, oh, I want to finish this one out. I feel like this is cool. I normally don't have a plan about it. Like I'm going to use these kinds of sounds. I just usually sort of let the song decide more. I would like to have a focus on it more, but I just don't seem to work like that so far.
So in terms of, if we can call this an album cycle, where are you? Are there more live dates planned? What parts of the world do you think you'll be able to hit? Like, where are you at in terms of this record?
I don't know. We're sort of near the end of phase one of the promotion cycle, and I don't know if we're going to be able to do dates or not. I'm actually in the middle of doing some dates with Matthew Sweet on the road.
Oh, great.
I just did some, and then I'm going to head out in the beginning of April and do some more with him, because he hasn't been out for like 5 years, and we're just getting that going again. So I'm going to be out, but not with this band. What I am trying to do, though, is my idea was to have some other artist, producer friends do remixes of maybe a couple of the songs on Ours and Others. So to that end, the first one, which is I think almost done, is our friend Jeff Murphy from Shoes, who he's remixing the song that they are on. And I asked him if he could remix that. So he's working on that for me. And I'm thinking of trying to release those as singles, which aren't on the record, but they refer back to the record. And then I'd like to get someone else to do another one or two if I can afford to do that, and if that all works out. But that's my idea of what I want to do. And I don't know if we're going to do any live supporting stuff at this point. I just don't know. I'd like to, but I don't know. It's a question mark right now.
Yeah. the remix idea, I guess it allows you to have another moment to put out and to talk about without actually having to be on the road.
I just thought maybe it'd be a way to get more life out of the record. And also, I think it would be cool. I just thought it'd be cool to have somebody do it because I mix all the songs on the record, which I like to do, and that's fun. I just thought it'd be cool to get somebody else's take on it. And also we can advertise that this person is on this, doing this, and then it helps to get other people, like fans of theirs that may not be aware, check it out. But it's kind of selfish just because I want to hear what they would do, somebody else. I mean, I'd love to get like I'd like to do one for each song. It'd be really cool. But I think maybe if I can do two to three, that'd probably be all we could do.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like you're getting in just a fine handle on this promotion thing. Get some of the other artists involved, tap into their fan base.
I just need to be able to pay for it. Just need to pay for it. That's the only thing.
Yeah, that pesky reality.
I have a dream of getting Mitch Easter to do one, who, of course, worked on the 2 Velvet Crush records that we did. And I always loved his stuff that he did. So I'm trying to figure out if I can do that or not. So that might be something to look for. After the Jeff Murphy version comes out, I'll see if I can work that out. And that's very selfish. I just like that, I wanted to work with Mitch again sometime, and this is the way I could do it. But I wouldn't be there, but I'd still have his involvement on a song would be meaningful to me.
I was thinking that maybe go to some of the artists whose work you had to turn down in the mix because it didn't work at the last minute and see what they do with maybe we'll just push the faders up on these tracks.
Yeah, maybe they might be mad about that. I think they would be okay with it, though. I think they're like guys that do a lot of session stuff. I mean, I always feel bad about that, actually, to be honest, because everyone that plays on our record didn't get paid. They just played. We asked them to do it because they were there, or we invited them, or whatever, and just to be included in the creative process. And they're really graciously contributing their time and their ideas. It's all very friendly kind of thing. So I feel extra bad if I don't use someone's part that they worked on. At some point, I have to just make the call. So I apologize to anyone, but there's only a couple of instances of it, I think.
Regardless of any of those difficult decisions you had to make along the way, both records are just beautiful slices of great songwriting and beautiful production. This is one listener that says all those decisions were very effective.
Oh, thank you. That was very kind of you. Thank you. It means a lot.
Yeah. Thank you for making time, Paul, especially so early in your day there. And hopefully I didn't intrude on your songwriting time.
Well, no. You probably intruded on my tax preparation time that I have to figure out in the next few days.
I've been putting that off, too. I was supposed to do it today. I blocked out some time Wednesday because I didn't even want to do it tomorrow.
I hate it. I know. I got to get into it. I've done about half of it, but I just don't like it.
It's the worst, man.
Yeah.
It's the worst. What bad news is waiting for me?
It's just like it takes so much effort, and it's like I can tell you what it's going to be without going through all the motions of it.
Good luck with that, sir.
Yeah, same to you.
Thank you so much, Paul Chastain. And as always, thank you for listening to Spotlight On, a production of 23 Media Ventures. I'm your host and executive producer, Lawrence Purrier. We're produced and edited by Michael Donaldson, with theme music by Q Burn's Abstract Message. If you'd like to support our work, please rate and review us wherever you listen to podcasts, and then visit us online at spotlightonpodcast.com. There you'll find our free episode archive, weekly postings on our official blog, links to donate and support, and a ton more. Thanks for listening, be safe, and stay in touch.